Certainly. Here is Section 1, The Arrival, a world on its knees, written with a minimum of 700 words, continuing the HFY story titled, They Thought We'd Bow, We Made Them Kneel. ##### Section 1, The Arrival, a world on its knees. They came like gods descending from the heavens, indifferent, silent, inevitable. It began on a day like any other. Children walked to school, drones zipped through traffic, and cities pulsed with the quiet rhythm of peace. After centuries of division, humanity had finally achieved a fragile unity. The global accord had ended borders, wars, and the greed of megacorporations. Poverty was at its lowest. Science had flourished. Humanity was preparing for its first interstellar colony mission. Then the sky tore open. Above Earth's stratosphere, an alien fleet appeared. 12 colossal ships that shimmered like obsidian thunderclouds, crackling with blue energy. There was no warning, no diplomacy, no time to comprehend what was happening. Every satellite, every orbital telescope, every military installation froze as the massive vessels cast shadows across the planet. A single message echoed through every frequency, every screen, every device. Kneel. That was it. No declaration of war. No negotiations. No cultural exchange. Just a command. One word, delivered in hundreds of languages, as though they already knew how we spoke, how we thought. Then the burning began. The Dravari hegemony, an empire from a distant region of the Orion Arm, unleashed their power with surgical precision. Capital cities became craters. Earth's orbital defense platforms were obliterated in minutes. Satellites blinked out one by one. The International Lunar Base, gone in a flash of white. The Martian terraforming hubs collapsed into dust. They weren't just attacking Earth. They were erasing humanity's progress. Within the first 48 hours, 2 billion lives were lost. Earth's military forces retaliated in desperation. Nukes, space artillery, railguns, even experimental antimatter devices, nothing scratched the Dravari shielding. Their technology seemed decades, maybe centuries ahead. They moved like phantoms, teleporting troops onto the ground, seizing control of major zones before resistance could organize. Where armies stood, only corpses remained. Where rebellion sparked, cities were flattened. The Dravari did not speak again. Their only communication came through images of humans kneeling, branded, chained, and dragged into servitude. They called it peace. We called it conquest. Within 2 weeks, Earth was under occupation. The Dravari didn't destroy the entire planet. They needed us alive, at least enough of us to serve. Cities were rebuilt into labor centers. Human leaders were publicly executed or enslaved. Our governments were dissolved, our networks seized, and our culture censored. Children were re-educated. Religions were banned. History was rewritten. Resistance was suicide. And so, the majority did what they had to in order to survive. They bowed. But not all. In the frozen wilds of the north, in the deep jungle ruins of old cities, in the ocean floor research bunkers and desert shelters, something endured. Not just people. Not just stubborn survivors. Fire. Defiance. Rage. ****. In a forgotten missile silo buried beneath the Rocky Mountains, a small group of soldiers, engineers, and rogue AIs gathered in silence. They studied, they planned, and they waited. Among them was Commander Raya Elenko, once a rising star in the Earth Orbital Defense Corps, now a fugitive with a bounty placed on her head by the Dravari overseers. She had watched her unit die. She had seen her father executed on a livestream after refusing to kneel. She had wandered the ruins of Denver with a fractured jaw and one remaining eye before crawling into the resistance bunker. And from the moment she arrived, something changed. Raya didn't speak of revenge. She spoke of justice. They came with ships and fire, she said one night, standing in the flickering light of an old holomap. They think kneeling is our only option. They think fear is their victory. But they're wrong. The others stared in silence, their faces bruised by months of hiding, their spirits ragged. They thought we'd bow, she whispered, placing her hand over Earth's shattered continents. But what they don't understand is that we've knelt before kings and tyrants before. And we always rise. The silence broke. Nods. Grins. A fist against a table. Something was building. Something the Dravari hadn't calculated, human resolve. The next day, the rebel cells began connecting. Codes were smuggled through black market implants. Drones were repurposed as couriers. Hidden labs started dissecting every piece of stolen Dravari tech. And in every message passed between them, 5 words returned again and again like a prayer, a promise, a prophecy. They thought we'd bow. Let me know if you'd like to move on to Section 2, The Rebellion Ignites, F, or need help creating a cinematic intro for this scene, F, or maybe a cover image based on this chapter, F? Certainly. Here's Section 2, Fire Beneath the Ashes. The rebellion ignites with a minimum of 700 words, continuing the story of They Thought We'd Bow, We Made Them Kneel. Hashtag Section 2, Fire Beneath the Ashes, The Rebellion Ignites. Beneath the shattered surface of Earth, something was stirring. Not just fear, not just anger, something older, deeper. A fire. The Dravari thought they had broken the human spirit. From orbit, Earth looked pacified, controlled. But they had only shattered the surface. Beneath it, resistance smoldered like coals waiting for air. It started small. A cargo ship carrying mineral ore exploded over the Pacific. A malfunction, claimed the Dravari. But inside that ship was a rebel-made micro-EMP, smuggled into the power core by a group of enslaved workers from New Indonesia. The explosion wiped out a supply chain that fed the entire Dravari Southern Hemisphere mining operation. Then a transmitter on an old Antarctic science station lit up, broadcasting encrypted messages across long-dead satellites. No one should have been alive down there. But they were. The Iceborne, they called themselves, former climatologists and drone engineers who had fled underground when the invasion began. Their message was brief: we hear you. Earth still breathes. Commander Raya Elenko watched all this from the Ash Division's hideout beneath the Rockies, her eyes narrowed, her lips pressed thin. One hand rested on her chest, on a steel pendant engraved with her unit's insignia, all that remained of her squad. The fire she had sparked was spreading. But fire without form was chaos. To make it into a weapon, they'd need more than courage. They'd need unity. It wasn't easy. The resistance wasn't one movement. It was dozens of scattered, paranoid, often hostile factions. The dust walkers of the Australian outback didn't trust the neo-Marxists hiding in old Moscow bunkers. The Pacific Ghost Fleet, a rogue flotilla made of half-sunken battleships, refused to share weapons. Many believed Raya was a Dravari plant meant to lure them into a trap. But Raya knew one thing better than any of them: humans had always fought among themselves. That's what made them dangerous. War was in their blood, but so was adaptation. She sent envoys. She took risks. She sent her best sniper to save a captured dust walker from execution. She gave the Pacific Fleet blueprints for a hybrid fusion drive scavenged from a downed Dravari scout ship. Slowly, painfully, she wove the threads of rebellion into a web. She called it the Ember Pact, a decentralized alliance of resistance cells across every continent, sworn to strike together when the time came. And strike they did. In Sao Paulo, power grids blinked and exploded as human saboteurs rewired Dravari generators into time-delayed bombs. In the Sahara, exosuit-clad raiders tore through a convoy of alien walkers, stealing plasma cores and uploading the footage onto an ancient satellite. The video went viral in underground channels. A single frame flashed repeatedly at the end. We made them kneel. The Dravari tried to hide the attacks. They executed whole neighborhoods. They broadcast the burning of rebel leaders. But they couldn't control the signal. Earth's old net, broken, fractured, but not dead, carried the message across continents. Still, the cost was high. The Ash Division lost a quarter of its fighters in an ambush when a defector turned out to be a plant. The neo-Marxists sacrificed an entire underground city to take down a single orbital cannon. And in one of the worst massacres, 2,000 rebels and civilians were vaporized when the Dravari turned a weather control satellite into a kinetic weapon and dropped it on the ruins of Paris. Raya watched the destruction with shaking hands, her fury barely contained. We can't win like this, said Commander Ilya of the Iceborne, transmitting from her glacial bunker. We're scattering ourselves thin. We're testing them, Raya said. Every strike we make teaches us something new. And it was true. Human scientists, those still free, were dissecting every scrap of Dravari tech they could find. They learned that Dravari energy shields required a millisecond of cooldown after absorbing plasma blasts. That their implants had language vulnerabilities exploitable with 20th century malware. That their commanders, while genetically enhanced, still relied on rigid hierarchies. They weren't gods. They were just better armed tyrants. And tyrants could bleed. That realization became the soul of the rebellion. Raya ordered her teams to hack into a downed patrol ship, recover its transmission array, and broadcast a message not to humans, but to the Dravari themselves. It was in their own language, cracked by months of desperate AI pattern analysis. It said, "We see you. We learn. We adapt. Kneel before you burn." The message caused panic in the Dravari chain of command. Earth's invaders had underestimated human ingenuity, their chaotic adaptability. They thought terror would keep us bowed. Instead, they'd fed the fire. As the final winter before the counterstrike began to fall, Raya stood beneath the stars, watching the sky glow with orbital traffic. Somewhere up there, the Dravari were watching too, still thinking they were in control. She smiled. They thought we'd bow, she whispered again, but they haven't seen us rise yet. Ready to continue with Section 3, The War We Refuse to Lose, F, or want a poster design for the Ember Pact, F, or maybe a voiceover script from Raya's POV, F? Absolutely. Here's Section 3, The War We Refuse to Lose. Continuing, they thought we'd bow, we made them kneel with 700 plus words in a gritty, emotional, and strategic style. Hashtag Section 3, The War We Refuse to Lose. Victory didn't come like a sunrise, it came like a fist through glass. Once the Ember Pact was fully formed, humanity didn't waste time. There were no declarations, no parades. Only sabotage, ambushes, and cold-blooded strikes that bled the Dravari dry. For the first time since the invasion, the invincible empire bled red across Earth's soil. The war wasn't fair. It wasn't clean. And it damn sure wasn't glorious. Rebels died in droves. Children learned to load rifles before they could read. Civilians dug graves between fields of rubble. But every life lost sharpened the resistance's fury. Rage became discipline. Pain became precision. And the Dravari, the masters of the Orion arm, began to realize what they had woken. It began with Operation Howl. In the dead of night over the ruins of Old Berlin, a squad of Ember commandos boarded a low-flying Dravari atmospheric freighter. Using magnetic grapples and adaptive camo, they stormed the cargo hold mid-flight. The ship never made it to its drop zone. Instead, it crashed into a Dravari processing facility, wiping out thousands of enemy troops and disabling 2 transport lines. The signal broadcast before the crash became legendary. From the ashes we rise. From that moment, war became relentless. Across the Amazon, jungle ambushes shredded armored Dravari patrols. The Dust Walkers turned Australia into a landmine field from horizon to horizon. On the outskirts of New Tokyo, human-engineered EMP storms shorted out dozens of their shield pylons. And in orbit? Space became hell. The Pacific Ghost Fleet, once laughed off as outdated relics of the old navies, re-emerged with hybrid fusion cores, firing rail slugs made from mined Dravari alloys. They punched holes in Dravari satellites and carved up blockade ships with magnetic torpedoes. Earth's orbital defense grid, dead for years, flickered to life again, cannibalized from the ruins. But none of it came cheap. Commander Raya Elenko learned that quickly. Her people were winning, but they were also burning. In one brutal month, 63 rebel cells were lost across Africa and the Middle East. Dravari retaliation became more savage. They dropped seismic warheads on rebel bunkers, turned villages into ash, executed entire populations for harboring fugitives. Raya watched video footage of resistance members being flayed alive and displayed on broadcast towers as a warning. It broke something in her. She didn't speak for 2 days after the footage arrived. Then she walked into the Ember Command tent, stared at the map of Earth divided into red and green zones, and said, "No more." She called for a new phase, asterisk not just survival but domination star. That meant strategy. Coordination. Unthinkable risks. A week later, they intercepted a data burst from Dravari Command, coded heavily, but not perfectly. Their communications relied on a frequency called the Trellnet, a hive-linked signal routed through a central command carrier in geosynchronous orbit. If that carrier fell, the entire occupation could collapse. It was a suicidal plan. No rebel ship had ever pierced Dravari orbital defenses. Not one. But Raya had no interest in surviving anymore, only in ending it. They built Neilstorm. It wasn't a battleship. It was a corpse. A gutted Dravari freighter, repainted, restuffed with explosives and humans wearing radiation-shielded armor and insane grins. A virus was encoded in its communication array, crafted by rebel hackers using languages spliced from Earth's most ancient systems and the stolen code of the Dravari. Its job wasn't to fight. Its job was to die loud. The plan? Sneak past Dravari sensors using broken command signatures, dock with the carrier, breach manually, and upload the virus, crippling their military AI coordination across Earth. It had a 98.7% projected fatality rate. Raya volunteered to lead it herself. She never got the chance. Her younger brother, Aaron, still a teenager, snuck aboard the night before the launch and locked himself in the virus chamber. When the ship reached the carrier, he overloaded the shielding to punch through. He died instantly, along with 5 elite Dravari overseers and the carrier's central nexus. The virus worked. Dravari ships began falling from orbit. Ground units lost coordination. Shields sputtered. Drones froze. Panic spread like a virus of its own. The rebels struck hard. They launched simultaneous uprisings on every continent. Cities fell back into human hands. Resistance banners were hoisted where Dravari crests once flew. A coordinated Earth-wide assault overwhelmed their ranks, forcing the once mighty hegemony into retreat. But the fire wasn't just in our weapons. It was in our souls. Humans fought like no species the Dravari had ever conquered. Not for resources. Not for land. Not even for revenge. We fought to prove we had never bowed. And in that brutal, messy, beautiful chaos, we became more than a resistance. We became a revolution. Want to continue with Section 4, Victory Forged in Vengeance, F, or should I create a quote graphic of Aaron's sacrifice, F, or a trailer script for Operation Neilstorm, F? Absolutely. Here's Section 4, Victory Forged in Vengeance. The final part of your story. They thought we'd bow, we made them kneel, written with 700 plus words of intensity, catharsis and triumph. Hashtag Section 4, Victory Forged in Vengeance. The final battle didn't begin with thunder. It began with silence. High above Earth, the Dravari command fleet floated in disarray, its communications severed, its ranks broken by the virus uploaded through Operation Neilstorm. Once flawless formations now drifted in fractured constellations. Ships collided. Power cores surged. Pilots barked orders into dead channels, their AI assistants sputtering with corrupted logic. And below, Earth rose. Cities once choked in alien control now blazed with rebellion. Rooftops flew resistance banners. Streets echoed with the crackle of human plasma rifles and the roar of makeshift tanks built from repurposed mining crawlers. Humans had never been meant to win. Not in the Dravari's calculations. But the Empire had failed to factor in one vital equation. We were too damn stubborn to lose. Commander Raya Elenko stood atop the shattered remains of the Denver Reclamation Complex, staring into the sky. Fires reflected in her eyes. Her armor was battered, her voice hoarse from a week of non-stop battle. But her mind was focused. This was no longer survival. This was the reckoning. The Dravari launched a desperate counterstrike, deploying their elite warriors, the Gencore genetically enhanced commandos bred for absolute loyalty and unrelenting violence. They landed across North America, burning towns and leaving trails of mutilated civilians. But this time, humanity didn't run. We hunted them. Every rebel cell had one priority: destroy or capture Gencore units. In icy tundras, jungles and deserts, humans outmaneuvered their physically superior foes using tactics the Empire never studied: improvisation, irrational sacrifice, raw emotion. The final act began in orbit, with Operation Black Echo. The plan: seize control of one of the fractured Dravari carriers, breach the High Command Citadel, and force surrender on a galactic broadcast. Not just for Earth. For every world the hegemony enslaved. Raya led the assault team personally. They launched in silence from a hidden platform beneath the Siberian mountains, using cloaked shuttles built from the wreckage of 3 Dravari corvettes. As they approached the Citadel, Raya looked around at her squad, battle-hardened ghosts from every continent. She saw scars. Saw loss. Saw defiance. And above all, she saw hope. The breach was chaos. They entered through a ruptured hangar, using magboots and zero-G formations to navigate its labyrinthine corridors. Dravari defenders rallied fast, but not fast enough. Humans moved like a storm, breaching doors, laying suppressive fire, using hacked Dravari drones as their own scouts. Room by room, they carved a path through the Empire's last fortress. Finally, they reached the throne chamber, ornate, brutal, and cold. At its center stood High Marshal Zrenvier, cloaked in armor woven from living metal, towering above Raya's team. "You should not be here," he snarled in a deep, synthetic voice. "This is not your world anymore." Raya stepped forward, eyes locked on his. "No," she said, leveling her weapon. "This is our world again." The battle that followed wasn't one of weapons, it was one of will. Zrenvier charged with primal fury, his blade slicing through steel and bone alike. He killed 2 of Raya's squad within seconds. But she didn't stop. She faced him alone, scarred and tired but unshaken. Their fight crashed through the chamber, blade versus gauntlet, alien strength against human desperation. And then, she won. It wasn't with elegance or skill. It was with a broken pipe, jammed beneath his breathing ports. It was with a scream that shook her throat raw. It was with a promise fulfilled. She made him kneel. Not just with force, but with a message. Cameras hidden in the Citadel, rewired by Ember technicians, broadcast the image across the solar system.
A Dravari warlord. On his knees. Bleeding before a human.
We do not bow, Raya said, breathing hard. We make empires kneel. And the galaxy heard. The Dravari didn't surrender so much as collapse. Command links disintegrated. Subjugated planets revolted. Even within the Empire, alien species once forced to serve saw Earth's rebellion as proof that freedom was possible. Earth, once the occupied, became the symbol of uprising. ####aftermath. Months later, the world was still in ruins, but the rebuilding had begun. Not just of cities, but of identity. The Coalition of Free Worlds was formed, a loose alliance of newly liberated planets, led by humans but built on a single principle: no species will ever kneel again. Commander Raya refused any titles. She returned to the ruins of Denver, to the place where it all began, and planted a new flag, simple black, with 5 crimson stars representing the 5 continents that had first rebelled. When a reporter asked her what message she had for the universe, she answered simply, "Don't mistake silence for surrender." The story spread far and wide, carried by soldiers, poets, and historians. It wasn't about technology or strategy or superior numbers. It was about something ancient.
The will to rise.
They had thought we would bow.
But in the end,
we made them kneel. Would you like a PDF of the full story, F, a trailer script for this finale, F, or a cover image showing Raya standing over the kneeling Dravari commander, F?